I was going to tell this story if I was ever going to make a video about childbirth, but instead I'm going to use it under, I guess, the chapter of anger. And how can we see anger as a gift? How does anger serve us? And this particular story is a good one for that, I think. So we were told, many of us as children, not to be angry, conditioned to suppress expressions of anger. And because of that, we store a lot of things that made us angry, and then slowly but surely became less of ourselves because we weren't allowed to express basically what we thought was not right. If we look at what anger does, it tries to steer us away from being oppressed. And when we don't listen to that anger, and we instead listen to logic or other people's opinions, we misalign away from ourselves. So anger has a very, very good purpose. It's there for a reason. It can be used as a fuel. If you watch, and especially I used to love football in like the early 2000s when I was younger, and I don't know, like the passion and the war of the captains between the football teams. They, sometimes they really kind of hated on each other, felt angry about one another, but it spurred them on to be the best they could be in those matches. Sometimes you need a little fire to claim victory. So anger isn't such a bad thing. It gets a bad name when it gets suppressed and unchecked, and then it becomes passive, or outbursts happen randomly years later because that person doesn't know how to deal with it properly, or they take it out on other people. So I'm going to tell us hopefully a story quite quickly, try and do it as quickly as I can, which doesn't make me feel angry anymore, but I guess it must have made me feel angry at the time. It's strange when you look back on it and you're not feeling angry. But at the time, it would give reason for anyone to be angry. And that was at the birth of my son. It was 2019. So I was basically, this is happening to lots of women in all levels, especially in the UK. I was basically forced to have an induction. And by forced, you always got to say yes, really. But the coercion that goes on is unreal. I was told my baby would die the next day unless I had an induction. And if I didn't do it, the risks of, death for me and him would go, it was crazy. And there's no real reason for it. He wasn't measuring big or anything. And so late, for 41 weeks, which they say is too late, it's not too late, I eventually gave in and just was like, okay, I'll just do it. And had an induction. And then I had these, labour just came on straight away for me. Really quick, really unnatural. It's meant to ease, you're meant to ease into it, and then it sort of peaks at the end. No, it was bam, straight away for me. But and I was still in the ward that I had the induction, and they're like, "There's no way you're in labour. No way. Go and get some sleep." I was like, "No, I'm sure I'm in labour." No way. Anyway, I insisted on them measuring. They can put a belt around you to measure the contractions, and it confirmed what I was saying. They were going off the charts, every 5 seconds, off the charts, off the charts, off the charts. no, you couldn't possibly be in labour. So even like they weren't believing me, they weren't believing their machine. It's too quick, you're going to be 24 hours at least. Never seen it happen that quick. And I kept making a fuss because I was like, this is crazy. But they, I think, thought I was just making a fuss over nothing. That's not me. I would say I've got a really, and anyone who knows me, a really high pain threshold. I broke my ankle, I walked on it for 3 days. Like, it's just like, whatever. I can handle pain. But when you're, now we know what happened was I was in labour, of course, and I was at peak labour when I had multiple women tell me I hadn't even started. So imagine being told that when you're at the period of time which is meant to be the most painful experience of your life. Oh, you haven't even started yet. But of course, when it's your first child and you don't really know what's going on, you've got no experience, you don't know what to believe, and you're in such a vulnerable state, you can't really stand up for yourself. So they kept banging on about giving me diamorphine, which is some version of heroin, so I could sleep, so I could shut up, basically. And I kept saying no, because I was like, what's the risk? And again, why, you're in your peak labour pain and vulnerable. Why am I having a conversation like this? It's just crazy. The only risk is, they said, the only risk is the baby might have breathing problems, but it's only if it's administered within 4 hours of the birth. They were like, there's no way you're going to give birth within 4 hours. You're going to be 20. They just kept saying 24 hours, 24 hours. I was like, no, I think he's going to come soon. And they almost like laughed at me as if I was like some naive little girl. And no, and if you don't sleep, you're never going to last. That's what they kept saying. I declined that diamorphine 4 times. I just said, give me something else. They didn't even give me gas, air. They gave me nothing. They said the only thing they could give me was this diamorphine. And in hindsight, we know I was in peak labour at this point. So eventually I caved. The 5th time, I was just like, whatever, I'm desperate. Just give me anything then. I'll listen. Maybe I'm wrong. And they put it in my thigh. And it did absolutely nothing for the pain. All it did was like make me shut up, like I just like this crazy weird head thing that made me feel sick, and like everything was blurry. I wasn't gonna go to sleep on it, and the pain was exactly the same. All it did was shut me up because I couldn't speak as much. Anyway, a few seconds after it was administered, I was sick everywhere. Obviously, that was my body's way of trying to get it out. And all over the floor, they were like, oh, God, I got to clean up the sick. And someone outside ripping up boxes. When I was sick everywhere, I had to then stand up. And as soon as I stood up, I just wanted to, like, not push, but yeah, it was just like, oh, the baby's gonna come. Or I needed the toilet. So it's like, I need to get to the toilet. They're like really busy cleaning up my sick. And who I was with at the time walked me, they were asleep the whole time, but they walked me to the toilet, and then my son's head came out on the toilet. And then it took an age, it seemed, for anyone to believe him and come and see me. And it took the head coming out of a toilet for them to finally believe I was in labour. And then the first thing they said was, whatever you do, don't push. So it went from 10 minutes earlier, no way, you're not in labour, 24 hours, to don't push. again, going against what my body wanted to do. They threw me. Then they had this discussion, the two women. I'm on it like off, like hazy with this heroin they've given me. Having this argument about, do we give it? Does she give birth here, or have we got time to go upstairs? Eventually, they kind of threw me on this wheel bed, raced me. My head was like crashing against the walls. Through the corridors, in the lift, upstairs to the labour ward, threw me onto a bed. And they were like, okay, now you can push. And I didn't push, I was like free to release him. And he just kind of like slipped out, and it was like, they were all like shocked. Wow, that was so quick, I said. And like, oh my God, you did it all yourself? It's like, yeah. And then they handed him to me, and I looked at his face, and his face looked like a bit grey, and exactly how I felt, like sick of this drug I'd just been given. And then he went greyer and greyer, and I was like, there's something wrong with him. You need to see him. Oh no, I just checked him, he's fine. No, there's something wrong with him. And then she like dawdled over again, looked at his face, took him to the whatever, like the table thing next to me, rang the bells, alarm bells. About 12 doctors in white coats came in, resuscitating him for what seemed like 10-15 minutes at the time. He had no idea whether he was going to live or not. Putting sticks down his throat, pumping 1, 2, 3, 4, like it was like he was going. And eventually I think they stabilised him, but then put him in like a glass incubator and wheeled him off to like where the incubators go, NICU. And I was kind of like left there a bit like frazzled. And then this new midwife said to me, oh, don't worry, that happens all the time. Does it? And another one who was downstairs with me was like, oh my God, that's crazy. Are you okay? Like, yeah. But I was like, yeah, when you're on that drug, you're like a bit like out of it, I guess. Anyway, I was desperate to see him. That's the only thing I wanted. They're like, no, you need some toast. I was like, no, I want to see my baby. And I don't think I was angry at the time. It's more like angry afterwards. But we can't be angry and blame other people. Because I make my reality. My higher self makes my reality. And all that separates me and my higher self is states of awareness. And if I reflect on that scene now, it's like, well, what was my reality trying to tell me? What was they? Again and again, it was like, you're not listening to yourself. And I created all of these, like, I guess, they weren't villains. They're trying to do their job. They just, they look at the data, do their lists, check the boxes. They're definitely not trained to listen to the mothers. But that's the thing. That's what taught me as a new mother to only ever, from that period on, listen to myself. And those kind of things I think would have kept happening until I finally learned, that's it. I'm not listening to anyone else. I listen to myself with regards to me and my child. And that's, what I did. So anyway, he was in NICU for 5 days after that. What a problem after another problem happened. Jaundice, and they blamed the jaundice on him having a different blood type to me. I blamed the heroin and the alcohol and the vitamin K shot that was given to him. That makes more sense. And they tried to not write down what was the cause of his near-death experience, the breathing problems. And I said about 20 times to about 20 different people, obviously it was diamorphine, wasn't it? It was diamorphine, it was administered too early. Should never be administered in birth, within 4 hours of birth. And they just kept trying to get off it, not write it down. Anything they could have done to not write that down. And eventually I got one person to write it down. They really didn't want to. So it's just like, what is this system? It's not about care. It's about trying to get away with stuff. And not listening to mothers. So, yeah, he had another thing after another thing come up. They would text me when I was allowed to see him, and then I'd get there and he'd be screaming and screaming. Obviously, he just wants to be with his mum. He doesn't want to be attached to all these machines and beeping. It was a horrible room he was in. And I was so mad because every single act of meddling that happened to have caused it. I would have been better off going in a field, giving birth, and biting off the umbilical cord of my teeth. We'd have been, mum and baby would have been happy doing that with no intervention. Every single intervention in that birth nearly resulted in his death. That's quite a serious thing to face. But the lesson in it was to never, ever go against my own intuition myself again. And I never have. And I haven't really been that angry since. Because when we listen to ourselves and we learn how to say, no, that's not for me, or yes, this is right for me, there's nothing to be angry about because we've made the decision for ourselves. And we get angry when we say yes to something that we don't want to say yes to. And we tend to then put the blame on something else. It's like, well, I didn't want to do that. They made me do that. But really, the catalysts in life are like those traumatic experiences, or they're the haters or whatever. Because it's like, what is it trying to teach me? What am I trying to teach myself? And that lesson was always listen to yourself. Look what could possibly happen, potentially happen. And that's the worst thing, is your child nearly dying. Look what could happen if you don't listen to yourself, because I was right the whole way through that process. I was right, and the system was wrong. They try to gaslight you and say, no, the data says this. But it was wrong. Well, for me, anyway, and my experience, they were wrong. And being angry about that is healthy, because, well, that's just shaped who I am now. If I wasn't angry about that, it would be weird. And no, what I wouldn't even entertain. My reality wouldn't even entertain that happening now. Them saying, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to say, I'm like, no way. Like, fuck off. Doesn't even come up. But it really came up then because I doubted myself. I wasn't so sure if my intuition was right or not. I was on the fence. You kind of want help. You kind of want steering. You kind of want to listen to experts. But every time I did that, it nearly resulted in something catastrophic. And so now I know, from a bad experience and for being angry about it, now I know that my intuition is always going to trump anything, any kind of thing the system wants to tell me to do. And that is how anger, or something traumatic, or being angry about something that happened to us, which wasn't really like our fault. Wasn't, when I explain this story to people, they all say, this is never, oh, that wasn't your fault, that was awful that they did that. Essentially, that scene was made by me, and it taught me to really listen to myself, and nothing could have been as strong as that scene. Other mothers who have had okay birth experiences are still on the fence about their intuition. Oh, am I making the right decision? They still listen to experts. Are they listening to themselves? No. I am. My son does. He listens to himself. So there's the blessing, there's the gift in that challenge. And it's strange talking about anger when I don't feel angry about it at all. I don't feel anger towards any of the people who are involved. It's just no blame. Because I needed to set that scene up. And it's a really good tool. If there's anything any of us feel angry about any stage in our lives, it's like, well, if you're angry about being in a situation, say like you feel angry if you're in a job you hate, well, great. Your anger is telling you to leave that job. If you're angry when you're around certain people, well, great. That anger is telling you to not spend time around those people. If your anger is about anything, it's steering you away from a situation that is not serving you. And so anger can then be seen as a great tool for survival and a broader sense of consciousness and reaching those higher states of joy and forgiveness and gratitude. Because there is no one really to blame. We are completely, solely responsible for the reality that we create through our choices. And a lot of people, I guess it's easier to try and, rather than look within and go, why did I create that scene? It's easy to go, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. I'm being oppressed and there's nothing I can do about it. But there is. We create our reality. And something like that will never happen to me again, because I've chosen a different path of choices. And I think it's beautiful to speak about anger in this way, to see it as a tool for happiness.